A few months back, I was watching the season two finale of HBO's Succession. And in one of the exchanges between two of the lead characters, something really stood out to me. Now, if you haven't checked out the series and you like good, well-crafted dramas, you should definitely check it out. And I should add that there is a spoiler in this episode. So if you've been meaning to, watch the show and you're not quite caught up, I would say go back, watch it, then come back to this episode, right? Okay, so let's move right along. Now, to give a little context, the show appears to be a creative slant in portraying the real life media mogul Rupert Murdoch's family, which coincidentally was sold off to Disney, I want to say in the last year or so, with the exception of the Fox News network. So you have this powerful family with enormous wealth generated by the revenue that they get from their entertainment empire of, amusement parks, broadcast, digital distribution, and the whole nine, right? So, one of the big story arcs of the season was the family's patriarch, whose name is Logan Ryan, portrayed by Brian Cox, in naming one of his four adult kids as the successor to run his billion-dollar multimedia company. Without giving away too much, he made his choice and named his daughter as the new CEO in a semi-surprising twist. One of the boys up for consideration as successor was very disappointed in getting passed over, to which the father explained, "Son, you're, quote, not a killer." Meaning in the father's eyes, the son wasn't tough enough to run this big multinational corporation in a hyper-competitive and cutthroat business of media entertainment. I actually agree with that assessment based on what the character, meaning the son, what the character demonstrated in the 2 seasons of the show. So, but that line got me thinking about myself and a ton of people that I know. And I asked myself, am I a killer? And I wondered who the proverbial killers around me in my lifetime were. Then I wondered what the actual value is in being able to access and command a killer mentality. And I thought, what does he mean? What did the character mean? So when I put it into my own words, I think a killer is someone who is able to execute tough decisions during high-stake situations. And in sports parlance, you're talking about a finisher or a closer. So think of any of the great athletes that shouldered the pressure and the spotlight and either, defeated his or her opponent or executed a series of great plays to defeat that opposition. People that come to mind, you can say Serena Williams. You can say somebody like LeBron James, and baseball, Clayton Kershaw, and fighting John Jones. Like, those are killers. But why is that an important attribute to have in everyday life? What does a killer look like? What does that killer talk like? And I think it could be anybody, regardless of gender or age or ethnicity. The reason this is an important skill to have is because there are habits, experience, and relationships we need to put behind us, or as one of my sisters say, putting a period behind that sentence. Through the course of one's life, there will be countless tough decisions needing to be made by you and you only. The ability to effectively make these decisions will sometimes determine if you will advance through or beyond a given obstacle. You are the main character in the movie that is called your life, and it is you that must slay the symbolic dragons in whatever form they may be. Sometimes that dragon is addiction, an abusive relationship. It could be laziness, fear, a complex business decision, a tough conversation, a demand for something that may be rightfully yours. You can fill in the blank with whatever. A number of things. So some people may think, well, hey, that's not me. I can't do that. Or maybe I'm not an intimidating person. I'm not some physically imposing bruiser or whatever you want to say. The thing is that you don't have to be any of those things to be a figurative killer. How do I know? Well, I've seen other people do it. Small, soft-spoken, attractive, unattractive, I don't think it really matters, because you don't have to be nasty about it. And you don't have to make it some big, dramatic scene. What matters is that you focus on the isolated action needed in addressing a given problem. For example, a buddy of mine had a dog he absolutely adored, but I want to say after nearly 15 years, the dog's health was in serious decline, and he entered a stage where the animal was suffering on a daily basis despite all of the comforts he tried to give the animal. So the decision was clear. Should he let the animal suffer 24-hour discomfort and pain, or does he have the poor animal euthanized humanely? So he decided on the latter, and although it was a very painful decision, it was the right thing to do to end the grieving and the animal's suffering and move beyond with his own life. And I want to add that you can be a dignified killer, if that makes sense. Professional sports teams make tough decisions, and respectfully saying, they'll say goodbye to players who may be past their prime. Or it could be a parent saying no to bailing their adult kids out if they have a track record of being irresponsible. Friends say goodbye to childhood relationships that have aged out or have grown too toxic or just really stagnant. I can totally see some people thinking that they can't be like that because that's not who they think they are, or it's just too uncomfortable. Or perhaps, you may make excuses as to why you chose to not be confrontational. But the question I would pose is, why should you suffer through stagnation when the proper course of action is clear to you? What's the payoff in shying away from an opportunity to advance your position in life? Think about it. Now, I think the actual danger in getting too accustomed to needlessly eating shit, and that could be shit from work, shit from colleagues, shit from your family, friends, or romantic partners. And the thing about that is, as long as your mouth is figuratively open, people will proceed in shoveling that shit in it. So not only are you carrying this mouthful of shit, you're also carrying perhaps some disappointment in yourself. That disappointment is rooted in you not following through with the needed action, and that is the defining moment of you saying, no, I cannot do X, or this thing or interaction stops now. I've been through it myself, and I ended up being very unhappy with myself that I didn't take care of that piece of business, whatever it was. So if you feel like you're not very strong in this area and you're wondering how do you develop or perhaps nurture this skill, here's what I would say. I would treat that skill like an emotional muscle. Maybe you're not quite good at it yet, but that's okay. I suck at plenty of things, but what I do is consciously recognize where I'm weak, then deliberately practice with easier moments and progress towards the complex. So in your case, start with something simple like saying the word no. Maybe it's rejecting a phone call when you have important things to do, or you may need a little me time. Maybe a coworker is again offering some of their nasty ass home cooked food that you don't want no part of, so you can politely decline and say, no thank you, or nah, I'm good. Get a few of these under your belt until you're at the point where it's relatively effortless. Now, from there, you move on to the more intermediate moments. Maybe you have one of those friends that always shows up an hour late without notice. You confront them like, yo man, like what the hell? No text, no phone call, no heads up. They may brush you off and be like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, my bad. The advanced version of that is, you know what, look, here you go again, 45 minutes late, an hour late, no heads up. Look, I'm not fucking with you anymore. I'm going by myself, I'm doing my own thing, be pissed if you want. Being a killer doesn't mean you have to be all over the place. It doesn't mean you have to be loud, obnoxious, or a show-off. It also doesn't make you a bad person. which some people will try to paint you in that way through their narrative, despite how wrong they might be. This is how some poor performing or neglectful employees react. Same thing with troubled athletes who get dismissed from their teams after yet another, domestic violence or a drunk driving incident or some barroom fight. Just like some of our bad habits, severing off some relationships or putting a definitive end to anything that is not serving you, they need to go.